2004, Pastor Kevin and I, with our wives, returned to our hometown, Milwaukee, with a dream inspired by the International Christian Fellowship in Padua, Italy. This church was a small congregation of immigrants to Italy from all over, brought together not by target marketing, not by a common appreciation for rock and roll worship, not by a huge building or laser light show, but united by an uncommon love for Jesus Christ and His church. It was a challenging return to the simplicity of the gospel community. An idea that led me to the pastorate at a young age, but an idea that got crowded out by the onslaught of church growth strategies, marketing methodologies, and the lure of greater numbers. It was an idea that was betrayed by the notion of building a church. But on our returning to Milwaukee, we were determined to return to the simple goal of being the church. We would commit to being a community given to the principles of Jesus Christ and each other, committed to seeing the gospel go forward wherever He led us, not for strategic purposes, but for His glory, never seeking to use the church for our own comfort or pleasure, but so that His name would be lifted high and His people would find comfort in His presence. It is with this ideal that Mercy Hill Church was born.
After a series of God moments over a 3-year period of time, He led us to the second floor of this dusty old warehouse in the middle of Bayview, known as the Hyde House. And with a core team of 60 friends and family, we launched in April of 2007. And from the beginning, we could sense that God was doing something special. At our launch, we saw 225 people gather to worship for the first time in 2 public services. We settled in after that at around 130 people, and over the next 2 years, we grew to be a young congregation of believers rallied around the simple notion to be the church. We saw people saved, we saw marriages restored, the broken healed, and God was being glorified. We discovered that the simplicity of the gospel works. We outgrew our original location on the second floor, and after that moved to our current first floor auditorium.
It was around this time that I received an email from a man in Hartland, Wisconsin by the name of Chris Peterson. Chris reached out to me via email, and when we finally sat down, he told me of a small group of people who were committed to seeing a gospel-centered church planted in the Lake Country community. The challenge of undertaking a new church plant when Mercy Hill was an infant itself was not strategic. In fact, we were counseled not to do it, but committed to the principle that we as a church would work to see the gospel go forward whatever the cost. The mission to plant Mercy Hill Lake Country began. After meeting as a small group of believers in the Heartland area for nearly 2 years, Mercy Hill Church Lake Country was launched the spring of 2010. I was traveling every Sunday, preaching the 9 o'clock service in Bayview, the 10 o'clock service in Lake Country, then to return and teach the 10:45 service in Bayview. It wasn't until God brought Jonathan and Jessica Mosier to our church and led us to install Jonathan as the teaching pastor at Mercy Hill Lake Country in 2012 that the church really began to grow and finally begin to reach its potential. The sacrificial risk to stay true to our values brought forth a community that brings the simplicity of being the church to the Lake Country community.
Over the years, this commitment to these values has allowed us to embody the principles born in our hearts at the very beginning. It has allowed us to send missionaries to the corners of the globe: Sierra Leone, Jordan, Mexico, Italy, Rwanda, India, and more. It has allowed us to raise up ministers who serve in our locations and in other churches. It has allowed us to meet the needs of the people in our communities through benevolence, 2020 projects, and the New Hands of Mercy ministries. It has allowed us to bring healing, hope, and life to people hungry for the simplicity of the gospel. And it has allowed us to partner and plant more churches. In 2015, we came alongside Pete Zelkowski, a fellow member of the Acts 29 Network, giving him people and support to launch Imago Dei Church, and it too has become a thriving community reaching the western neighborhoods of the city of Milwaukee. And most recently, in September of 2016, we launched Mercy Hill Rock County. Back in 2008, God brought a young couple by the name of Joshua and Angie Dostal to the Mercy Hill Bayview location. And at that time, he used this community to minister to them and to pour into them for the sake of the gospel over several years, without knowing that God would bring them back to lead our newest location, bringing the simple message of the gospel to Janesville.
And with that, we are one church in 3 locations, with over 1,000 people gathering every Sunday to simply bring glory and honor to Christ. As we reflect on the history of Mercy Hill Church, I can't help but be excited about the future of Mercy Hill Church. As each one of us, pastor, elder, leader, layperson, continue to hold true the founding principles, there is no limit to what God will use us to do. As we lay down our own desires, not seeing the church as an instrument to serve our own wants, but as a community of believers looking to embody the gracious principles of the gospel, I can't wait to see what He will do through us next. If we keep being the church, you will be amazed at what He will do through Mercy Hill, Bayview, Lake Country, Janesville, and only He knows where next. I know it's amazed us.